October 4th, 2005. Christie Wilson was on the phone with her mother Debbie talking about Halloween costumes and her cat. The conversation was light, hopeful. Christie had been struggling lately, unemployed after layoffs at the tech company where she worked, but things were finally looking up. She had a job interview scheduled in 2 days, a fresh start in San Francisco, a chance to rebuild. That evening, Christie decided to visit Thunder Valley Casino one last time before leaving Sacramento. She was a regular there, skilled at blackjack, analytical and precise. She knew how to count cards and often walked away with thousands of dollars. Around 10:30 p.m., she called her ex-boyfriend to say she was heading home. She never arrived. The next day, he tried calling her 72 times. No answer. By October 6th, panic had set in. At 10:00 p.m., Debbie and her husband received the call that shattered their lives. Christie was missing. She had gone to the casino and vanished. The police were hesitant. Christie was an adult she could have left on her own. She had been dealing with depression, unemployment, relationship troubles. Maybe she just needed space. But Debbie knew something was wrong. Her daughter wouldn't leave her cat behind. She wouldn't abandon her medication, her luggage, her plans for the future. Thunder Valley Casino had over 700 surveillance cameras. Gathering and reviewing the footage took time, but eventually the tapes revealed what happened that night. Christie arrived just before 7:00 p.m. She withdrew cash, exchanged it for chips, sat at a blackjack table. She was winning. Then a man appeared. Short, stocky, black hair. He stood near the slot machines, watching her. After a while, he sat at another blackjack table. Christie moved between tables before eventually sitting beside him. The man was older, maybe twice her age. He acted friendly, patting her back, high-fiving her when she won. But something changed after Christie joined his table. Casino staff who knew her noticed it immediately. She started losing. She became disoriented, erratic. Her behavior was completely out of character. Her stepfather, Patrick Boyd, a police sergeant, reviewed the footage himself. He saw it too, the way her body stiffened, the way she moved differently. Something was very wrong. The man's behavior grew more aggressive. He wrapped his arms around her. He touched her legs. He leaned in too close. Christie pushed him away. By 11:00 p.m., she had been at the casino for 5 hours. She left the table and called her ex-boyfriend, telling him she was about to leave. But she didn't leave. She returned to the table and kept playing. As time passed, it became clear Christie was intoxicated despite having had only one drink that night. A drink the man gave her. By 1:00 a.m., Christie got into an argument with a dealer. Security intervened. The man stepped in, insisting he would escort her out himself. As they walked toward the exit, his behavior turned predatory. He grabbed her, pulling her close. She pushed him away repeatedly. The footage showed them moving toward the parking lot until they disappeared from view, entering what investigators call the black hole. The cameras rotated on a cycle, leaving certain areas unwatched for brief periods. Christie entered that blind spot and never reappeared. Debbie was devastated. Who was this man? What happened to Christie? Where was she now? A massive search began in the field surrounding the casino. Debbie and Christie's sister joined in. 3 days had passed. They feared the worst, then a breakthrough. The man had used a slot machine linked to his casino membership card. His name was Mario Garcia, 53 years old, married, father, soccer coach, owner of a large ranch. On paper, he was the last person anyone would suspect. His family defended him, insisting it was impossible. But when investigators ran a background check, they found a misdemeanor from the 1980s. They contacted the victim, Wendy Ward. What she told them changed everything. Mario Garcia was not who he appeared to be. Wendy had dated Garcia in her mid-20s. She described him as compassionate at times, but violently unpredictable. After enduring months of abuse, she tried to leave. He responded by sexually assaulting her. Weeks later, when she told him to stop calling, he drove to her home and kidnapped her in broad daylight. He assaulted her again in the back of his van. He dragged her into his apartment, pulled out a gun, loaded it, and held it to her head. He pulled the trigger. The gun wasn't loaded, but Wendy broke down in shock. He assaulted her a third time while she sobbed on the floor. Then he went to the kitchen and made himself a sandwich. Wendy pressed charges. Her legal team initially intended to charge him with kidnapping. 3 counts of sexual assault, and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. But in the end, Garcia was only convicted of the assault charge. He received a short probation. Years later, he reduced the charge to a misdemeanor, erasing his felon status. Wendy wasn't finished. She told investigators about Lynette Smith, Garcia's next girlfriend. On Christmas Eve 1979, 1 year after Wendy's ordeal, Lynette told Garcia she was leaving him. She was pregnant with his child, but refused to keep it after enduring constant beatings and abuse. That night, as Garcia, Lynette, and her mother drove home, their vehicle suddenly reversed toward the Oakland estuary, accelerated through both lanes, and plunged straight into the water. Garcia survived. Lynette and her mother drowned. Eyewitnesses saw the car pull over, reverse, and drive into the water. Garcia was still in the estuary when authorities arrived. He didn't mention the other passengers until hours later during formal interrogation. When he finally revealed Lynette and her mother's existence, he immediately asked for his attorney and refused to answer further questions. He claimed he wasn't driving and somehow slept through the accident. No charges were ever filed. The detectives were stunned. Their suspect wasn't just a violent predator. He was an alleged murderer. Garcia was arrested. Without footage of what actually happened to Christie after she entered the black hole, the evidence was circumstantial. But Debbie didn't care. She knew Mario Garcia was responsible. When detectives questioned Garcia, they noticed fresh scratches covering his face and neck. His left eye was swollen and bruised. He claimed he had been clearing trees on his property the day after Christie disappeared. But an ear doctor who sat across from Garcia and Christie at the casino the night before couldn't recall seeing any injuries. Garcia's alibi crumbled. Investigators returned to the surveillance footage, focusing on the parking lot blind spot. Garcia's car was barely visible on another camera feed. Only the taillights were in frame. He had parked in a dead zone. But detectives noticed something. Garcia drove a Toyota Camry. Early 2000s models had a feature where the lights flashed in quick succession depending on how many doors were opened. The footage captured 4 flash sequences. Every door had been opened. Then Garcia drove off, not toward his home as he claimed, but in the opposite direction. The trial began September 25, 2006, a year after Christie's disappearance. A trial without a body, without a murder weapon. Everything hinged on circumstantial evidence. Wendy Ward attended and sat beside Debbie throughout the proceedings. The prosecution showed the jury the surveillance footage, then they revealed new evidence. After Christie's disappearance, Garcia searched extensively on his computer for information about date rape drugs. Despite scrubbing his car with bleach, tiny strands of Christie's hair and microscopic droplets of her blood remained on the back seat. The injuries Garcia received were telling. Christie had attended kickboxing classes and had been taught self-defense by her stepfather, Patrick. He taught her to aim for the eyes if attacked, to fake an STD if someone tried to assault her. She had used those tactics before when an abusive ex physically assaulted her. That ex had 4 deep claw marks on his chest. Garcia had the same wounds. The prosecution dismantled Garcia piece by piece. His lies, his false alibi, his injuries, the DNA, the surveillance footage. After hours of deliberation, the jury returned guilty. Garcia was sentenced to 59 years, guaranteeing he would die in prison. But there was no closure. Christie was still missing. Her fate remained locked away with the man who took her. Garcia began writing to Debbie in 2017. His letters suggested some kind of deal could be made to help her find Christie. Debbie faced an impossible choice. This might be her only chance to be reunited with her daughter. She knew Christie was dead. She just wanted to turn the page. But closure came at a cost. How much was she willing to pay? In the end, Debbie refused. She would not let Garcia use her daughter's body as a bargaining chip. Detectives never stopped looking. They re-interviewed Garcia's family. His views had shifted. His son Chris shared something he had never fully understood before. A few days after Christie vanished, Chris had a big soccer game. Garcia, his coach, had never missed one. But that day, Chris found his father working on his tractor far from the house. He was frantic, disheveled. When Chris asked if he was coming, Garcia barely looked up. He muttered that he wasn't coming. Chris didn't think much of it at the time. But knowing what happened afterward, he wasn't so sure anymore. In 2005, cadaver dogs had searched Garcia's 5-acre property and found nothing. But with Chris's information, detectives returned with ground-penetrating radar. It picked up something buried deep beneath the soil. They started digging. 20 feet down, they uncovered a bone. An archaeologist was brought in. It was human. Detectives Nuno Tavares and Don Murchison had handled Christie's case for 15 years. Both fell to their knees when the archaeologist confirmed the discovery. As the excavation continued, an entire skeleton was recovered. Forensic experts identified it as Christie. The bones revealed she had broken her hand and nose, confirming she fought back before Garcia killed her. That night, the detectives visited Patrick and Debbie. Their daughter had finally been found. Debbie didn't know whether to be happy or devastated. There were hugs, silence, tears, letting it sink in. The next day, Debbie and Patrick broke the news to the world. They thanked the detectives who had never stopped looking for 15 years. On the anniversary of Christie's passing, Debbie had her remains cremated and finally put her daughter to rest. She could grieve the way she should have been able to grieve 15 years ago. There was peace in that. At a memorial held in Christie's honor, her best friend Tiffany took the stage. She remembered the words Christie had shared with her a year before her disappearance, when Tiffany's sister died. It was almost as if Christie had unknowingly written her own eulogy, her voice reaching from across the veil. Although her body was gone, her spirit would remain forever. One day they would join her again. Christie Wilson was 27 years old when she walked into Thunder Valley Casino on October 4, 2005. She was analytical, intelligent, full of potential. Mario Garcia took all of that away. He stalked her, he drugged her, he killed her. He buried her on his property and said nothing for 15 years. Christie fought until she couldn't fight anymore. She left her mark on her killer, and in the end, the truth came to light.